So, welcome to the first Salon de Puck, the first Puck Salon. My name is Puck, and I'm actually quite thrilled as to how this whole format is going to turn out, because I don't quite know yet myself. It's supposed to be a mixture between a vlog, a podcast, a jam session at times, because if you haven't figured it out already, it's very much going to be about music, this whole thing. But for me, it's mostly a opportunity to just lean back, talk about music, probably play some music for you as well, and not really think too much about it all. We are currently in my music room. This is where I spend quite a lot of my time, either outside or sleeping or in here. I just noticed that I can only ever do two of these things at the same time, which is rather deplorable. And other than that, I'm not really planning on doing much. The only thing, and you've probably already noticed it, that I am pre-planning is one particular melody for each salon. You've seen it underneath the Salon logo. I don't know if you heard it twice. It's Mozart's Kleine Nachtmusik, Mozart's little serenade. And when I'm about to play something, I'm always going to try to incorporate this melody into whatever I'm playing. I think it's probably best to start things off with an improvisation as well. Usually, whenever I played a concert for people, and I think without exception, I always asked a member of the audience to step forward and then press a random note for me, like this would be a G sharp. Yeah. And this luxury we obviously don't really have today. So instead, I'm just going to be using a tool that I'm actually using every day. This little bottle is filled with dice, and it's there to really kind of force me to play in all of the keys equally. So this would be D major. So apparently I'm going to be playing an improvisation on the little night music in D major. Let's see what happens. So, I think you have noticed by now that I'm not using the typical standard notation with a 5 lines. In D major, I think the theme would look like this. Instead, I'm using my notation, which just has 1 line and looks like this. If you're not a musician, there's no need to be frightened by this, because I am really trying to keep things in a manner that you can actually get an insight into music and not just be, I don't know, blinded by technical terms and stuff like that. So I think that even though I'm going to be talking about musical notations and stuff, I think very much this is going to be interesting for you. If you're a musician, this notation is going to be reappearing rather often throughout the salons, not just because I want to sell it, because it's for free. I don't really want to be selling anything. No, because this has very much to do with the way that I make music, and I think that it might be very interesting for you as well. If you've already watched the video on the notation, it's linked here. The salons are going to be more of a hands-on approach, where I'm actually like showing how you can actually use it and how to get started properly. And I think the most practical thing would probably be, this is the Bach book. You can find it here. And it's 100 of my favorite songs, but it's also, kind of a training ground of sorts for young musicians. I'm still using it. And the first piece happens coincidentally to be a piece by Bach, which is actually just an accident, but I very much like that accident, probably because I don't like any composers that start with an A. But yeah, so the first piece is this one. I can just play it for you real quick. Again. I think you recognize it. It's Jesu bleibe meine Freude. I think in English it's Jesus, joy of man's desiring. And I would just like to show you, if you've got that very simple melody, what you can actually do with it. Let me move over here. So when you just see the melody, it kind of looks like this. So this would be the melody in C major. However, with the old notation, you would just like kind of be forced to play it in the key that it is actually written in, while I would find no trouble whatsoever just like playing it in another key. Simple melody makes it possible for me to play the theme in any key. So if you're going to be telling me, now, I don't know, in this register, or in something weird as like C sharp major, then this is perfectly possible, while in the old notation, with any key that you play it in, it's always supposed to look different, which is something that I actually never really quite understood. And even if I'm playing it with like the bass, you would have to use the bass clef. If usually when I'm playing something in the right hand with the piano, it's actually in the violin clef, and in the left hand, it's in the bass clef as well. So I think no musician would actually have trouble like playing something that is supposed to be for the right hand with the left hand, but still, why notate it differently? And what's much more interesting than just playing the simple melody is something that I think is kind of like a modern version of the basso continuo or generalbass. Basically, a couple of hundred years ago, musicians used numbers and wrote them as kind of annotations to the melody, and this way kind of communicated what chords to play. And with the new notation, you don't really need that anymore, because you can very easily just figure out the chords on your own, because if certain melodies look the same, no matter what key you play in, you can always conclude what chords are fitting. For instance, or maybe you could just play the melody in the left hand. And all of these things are, I wouldn't say impossible with the old notation, but it's definitely harder, because you're very much confined to what is written on the page. And funnily enough, I mean, the composer that we just played from, Mr. Bach, he was actually said to be a really good composer, as well as a really good what's the term? Improviser? Improvisationist? Whatever. Yeah, if you want to get started, just take your instrument and pick out any melody from the Bach book and just try playing it. Maybe not just try and play it in one key, but maybe in two. And maybe after a while you're going to be playing in three keys. And I think this is probably something that would make out the difference between somebody who's really proficient with a notation and maybe a professional musician, and somebody who's just an amateur. The more experienced that you are, in the more keys you can actually play in. Speaking of chords and accompanying chords, something that is really interesting as well is that the notation is completely applicable to any kind of musical genre. So when we're talking about jazz, for instance, let me play some jazz for you. Keane, Dorham, Blue Bossa. If we look at that, we have now the melody line. By the way, if you look it up online, I can't include the melody line because of copyright reasons, but for some reason I can do it here on YouTube, so you would have to kind of write it out on your own, but here it is. And let me just play it for you real quick. So this is what's written on the page. It's just the melody. And most importantly, there's chords. No, actually I started adding a melody already. But the nice thing is, if you were telling me, hey, now play it in C major. So that too is something that is completely possible. And I only started transcribing jazz standards a couple of months ago. And I think that my sight reading really improved because I now have to play by chords and do that in multiple keys. And this was kind of terrifying at first because I had to not just play simple notes, like for instance, there's a couple of Bach inventions in there. Or, oh no, a little fugue by Schumann. Let's try this. Let's try a new key, maybe F major. Let's do that again. And maybe now G major. That was obviously not it. So this is very different from jazz standards because with jazz standards you really have to understand what you're playing more than when you're just playing from classical music because the chords don't really give you the entirety of the information. And so that was rather interesting and is rather interesting for me. Speaking of jazz, the second thing that I've prepared for each salon is actually something that you might recognize. If you follow my Instagram, every Vinyls Day, I'm actually recommending a vinyl record, and I think that I'm just going to be using like old ones that I came across. Or maybe something that I'm going to be posting in the future. And today it's going to be Charles Mingus album, which is one of the best jazz records that I know. It's from 1959. I'm not too much into the hidden lore of all these records because I think that it's mostly about the music and what it sounds like. And I very much like this one. It's, I think on Instagram I recommended the first track, Better Get Hit in Your Soul. I think most recognizable is probably Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, but the first one was really cool because when I was listening to it, back then I think they only had like 2 or 3 microphones. If you watch videos from Miles Davis recordings all the time, I think his Kind of Blue is from '95 as well. Basically, several musicians have to huddle in front of a microphone, and so it was much more about positioning than, I don't know, having like 16 different microphones and several takes and something like that. And what this one does different is that I think, I might be wrong, but to me it sounds like this, it's actually kind of playful about the positioning. Like you can hear somebody shouting in the middle of the room and it kind of sounds different because you're actually supposed to be speaking into that. And I think nowadays we would be going about things a little differently because we have artificial reverb. This is the only thing that I have plugged in here. If you listen to the sound of the piano, this is what it sounds like, amplified. Probably going to be talking about that after this one. can very much add reverb to that. And I think they hadn't been invented in the 50s yet. And just listen to that, because it's very different from Kind of Blue. With Kind of Blue, I'm always kind of I don't know, like freaked out by the brass solos, because they're so loud, and especially in comparison to the remainder of the musicians, and it's almost like it's very much centered around them. And with Kind of Blue, okay, Charles Mingus was a double bass player, so maybe that's why, but it seems more thought out in a way. This, by the way, is a Yamaha CP-70. I don't quite know what the CP stands for, but the 70 is in reference to the 70 keys, because a regular piano has 88 keys. And this one has 70 because it's supposed to be transportable, and I'm actually rarely missing the missing keys. And what's special about it, not just that you can fold it in half and thereby carry it easy, and I think Billy Joel uses it on My Life. I think it is on many Peter Gabriel and Genesis records. I know that Prince had it. The first time that I got to know it, it's on the Keane albums, Hopes and Fears. You might know Somewhere Only We Know. A very nice song. Yeah. I walked across an empty land. I knew the pathway like the back of my hand. So this is something, you've already seen it with the jazz standard, but this is something that is rather easy to do with the notation as well. Whether you are a pianist or somebody, like if I would just be playing it with the bass, then it would just be, whoops. Jeez, I just noticed that I didn't include the little night music at all. Sorry for that. I'm gonna be doing better next time. This is kind of what I do. I think that like I don't really know why musicians really have to have one particular genre. I feel like, firstly, this would be something that maybe musicians 200 years ago wouldn't even really understand. I think obviously like Mozart did understand that he isn't exclusively writing for the tavern, but he definitely didn't think of himself as a classical musician. He was just a musician and a composer and probably an improviser, most of all. And so to me, it's kind of all one thing, really. You like improvise a little. I'm definitely going to be doing some composing as well. I think I'm just going to be playing one of my own songs to finish things off. This is something that I originally wrote for a university series, and it kind of stuck with me. It's called Song of the Duchess. The main melody goes like, without the flourish at the end. Let me just play it for you. yeah, so there's that, and I think it would just be wonderful if like it would be normal for musicians to just compose, improvise with others. This is actually something with all of the improvisation that was going on today. I could have just prepared it without you knowing, and I think an improvisation is only ever real if a musician hears a melody that he hasn't heard before, which is obviously hard to do here with nobody else being here, and them hearing it maybe for the first time and then repeating it and then try and see what happens. And I forgot to include the little night music as well. Whatever. So this is kind of like the Salon thing. It's just me doing me. I would very much like to have guests over in the future and to just see what happens. If you want to get started with a notation, there's the little Bach book. I gave the link earlier. It's going to reappear often enough. Other than that, you know the drill. There's Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram. You can also go to, which is maybe a bit more to the point, you can actually also go to my webpage, herbach.com. There is a login area. Just click on the heart-shaped symbol. It's going to be a couple of bucks per month, but you're going to get you're going to get access to my musical archive. And this is something that I've been working on for a while now, and it's rather interesting because it's basically, I think, 1 or 2 hours now of music content, kind of centered at the moment on and around classical music, but because this is kind of where I come from, but I'm working on it. So until then, the next Salon is going to be next week, probably on Sunday as well, and until then, bye.